listening to Achtung Millwall, broadcasting from the beautiful South Birmingham. Accept no substitute.
Hi Nick, John Rankin here, just ringing in with the post-match report from Stoke City. Yeah, we went up there and watched the game. It was a lovely sunny day, but unfortunately there was a sense of foreboding that I actually felt as soon as the game kicked off. Really, Millwall looked a little bit off the pace. They flattered Stoke. I'm not making excuses, but I think we just threw the game away, really, to be honest with you. I mean, Stoke scored with a free header, and I didn't even bother watching it because they were putting pressure on us. They were putting balls in the box, and it was just a sense of inevitability that they would score, actually. And then, you know, we tried to claw our way back in, but we weren't winning the second ball in the middle of the park. We looked absolutely out on our feet, to be honest with you. We've been punching above our weight for so long. I think this was the day when the effort, you know, got on top of us, really. So all in all, if you give away an own goal, which George Saville did, and miss a penalty, which Jed Wallace did, you're going to struggle to come away with anything from the game, and we didn't. So what I would say, I think it was not so much a physical problem with our players. They looked mentally a bit out of sorts. We were very close to the players as they came on and off the pitch, because the players coming in the corner at Stoke, and I mean, when Jed Wallace walked off the pitch, he was virtually in tears. I was, 10 yards away from him, and he didn't want to look at any of the supporters. Gary Rowett came up and sort of patted him on the head and put his arm around him. And to me, he looked like he was close to tears.
Good morning, Nick. This is the venerable Bead. I thought I'd get on to you. You may have heard of me from the Anglo-Saxon Chronicles. I'm sure it's somewhere in your reading list. And I just want to say, rules is rules, mate. We always kick to the CBL in the second half, and we always allow a good run of results for the club to look like we're heading for the playoffs, and then we get the fans excited, and then, as in the rules of all venerable Bead, we blow up the hopes, and we've got to do it. It's not allowed that Millwall can keep going on and get on the Rowett train without stumbling along at the end. Okay, mate, I just wanted to let you know it's in the rules, and they're all in there. Oh well, bless you, Nick, and all at Achtung Millwall. This is a venerable Bead signing off. Catch you later. Good luck, Millwall. Up the Lions. Bye-bye.
Achtung, Millwall.
Huge thank you to John Rankin and to the venerable Bead, no less, for those two voicemails. Joining me on the show now is rugby journalist, Millwall fan, show regular, indie music aficionado, journo with a rugby paper. It's Mr. Neil Fissler. How you doing, Neil?
Yeah, not too bad, Nick. Not too bad. I hope I live up to that billing.
One of the first things I was ever told, listeners, when I first passed my driving test way back in the early 80s is, Nick, don't let your petrol tank ever run out, because you get all sorts of grit in your engine when you get down to a flat tank. And I think, Neil, Wednesday night was Millwall rather running down its petrol tank to empty and getting a bit of grit in its engine, because yesterday's 2-0 loss at Stoke was we looked very tired and very flat there, I felt, yesterday.
Mate, I think we have to be honest about it. This run was always going to run. Yeah, was always going to run its course and come to an end. Yeah, it wasn't going to carry on forever. And I think you're right.
No.
I think he's had the same 13, 14 players to pick from for the last month and a half.
Easy, yeah.
Absolutely shattered. So you can't argue with it. It is what it is. You've just got to be thankful that we had that brilliant run and that we've all gone back to enjoying watching Millwall again.
Yeah, which is a big achievement, because the season was, as we've said a few times, you and me and the other boys, I mean, the season was drifting rather, and suddenly we've got interest. I think we still have interest in the season because we're going into a very welcome international break now, a chance for some rest and recuperation. Yesterday's game was notable for the return of Tom Bradshaw, Shea Ojo. Bradshaw in particular, I mean, they're all rusty, Neil, but I thought he obviously worked a penalty that didn't go our way. But it's just really, we're into an 8-game end of season tournament in effect now, aren't we? And we've got returning resources. And I think that's not a bad position for a club like Mill to find itself in after such a strange season in many respects.
Mate, I think first of all, I think we need to acknowledge that it's just sod's law with Millwall that a player has run into some very good form recently, Benik Afobe, but he just happened to be on loan from the club that we were playing yesterday.
Loan tied. I don't know if that's an expression, but anyway.
Yeah, but it is good to see these lads coming back on the bench. The bench looked as strong as it's looked for a long time, really, isn't it? And I think you're right. I think, yeah, but it's great these players coming back. The international break now gives them a chance, or the players that have been playing, a chance to chill out for a week. So, charge more importantly, to get some miles in the legs of those players that are coming back. So they can either, I don't know what they'll do. There's probably an under-23 game. So you'd quite like to see them get a decent run out for the under-23s, wouldn't you? Or a behind closed doors friendly, something like that. And then we come back firing in 10 days to 2 weeks' time?
Yeah, the away game at Luton, which looks like a huge fixture on the agenda. I mean, just to dwell on yesterday, there isn't huge amounts to report, listeners. In truth, I think we can probably summarise it, Neil. Hope you'll agree that the team just looked at 6s and 7s. I mean, we just looked tired, leggy. Nothing worked yesterday. Basics were got wrong, which is always a sign when you're tired. You start to fail at the basics. I mean, the first goal was a bread and butter ball into the box that normally Jake Cooper or, if he were fit, Sean Hutchinson, Dan Ballard would deal with every day of the week, and it wasn't dealt with. And it was a sloppy goal, but it was just indicative of the whole team's lack of energy yesterday, I felt.
Yeah, I think it was back to, as you said, it was definitely a lack of energy. And I think a couple of weeks ago, we probably wouldn't have conceded either of those goals, because the second goal was an absolute mustard header from George Saville, wasn't it?
I thought George. They kept saying Murray Wallace on my commentary, but it was George Saville that I thought put in. It was a brilliantly executed goal.
But that guy was senile. Yeah, but that guy was senile on BBC Stoke, wasn't he? I've expected Stanley Matthews to be running down with him at one stage. Fucking hell.
Well, it wasn't far short of it. They dug out Mike Pejic. I mean, I do remember from the 1972 League Cup final. But I thought, really, if that's your kind of celebrity pundit, then you're right. Stanley Matthews is the next logical move, if he was still alive. God rest his soul.
Yeah, didn't you have Conor Mahoney playing at one stage? And
they were just random names in the end.
Yeah, they were. The own goal specialist Murray Wallace. Has he scored an own goal before?
No, not to my knowledge. It was
there's not much difference between Murray Wallace and George Saville, is there? Only about a foot.
I mean,
one's got light hair and the other's got darker hair, isn't it?
No. I mean, it was. I mean, this is what you get when you tune into the away team stream, listeners. But they described Murray Wallace as the own goal specialist. And I always think you've got to have at least more than one to be claiming any kind of specialism. And he's been one of our standout players. I mean, that they all have, Neil. I mean, when you go from that performance on Wednesday night, which was immense, players don't become bad players overnight. They just ran out of petrol. I think I'll go back to my 1970s Datsun 120 that I had, and when it ran out of petrol and it got grit in the engine, and that's what happened to us yesterday. It was, an enforced change up front. I thought Bury looked. He's not looked at at his strongest in recent games. So I think he's got a lot to learn still. I mean, he's only a youngster, and he's clearly got the ingredients, but it's a big ask to lead the line in a championship level fixture. I just think he looked a little bit light yesterday to me.
Mate, I think ideally they wouldn't have recalled him from Hartlepool.
I think you're right.
I think the plan was a bit like Alafe, is it, the lad at Sutton?
Yeah.
That they would just leave him there for the season. He'd get a hatful of goals and a hatful of assists, which I think he was well on his way to doing.
Yeah.
He's got a lot to learn. It's like young Lovelace on the bench.
Yeah.
He's okay, but again, he's got a lot to learn. So you've got to temper that, really.
It's it's very Millwall, isn't it? We get carried away with the rush of the cup run, which is effectively what we've had this series of was it 9 games, 8 games,
unbeaten, wasn't it? Yeah,
unbeaten. And we get carried away with it, but and it's great to see youngsters taking the field. But there's a lot to learn. I mean, the physicality of the Championship. This was a fairly average Stoke side yesterday, but they brought their A game. They're under Michael O'Neill. I think is a good manager. He's not had a great season, but they all know their stuff and they know their way around. I think Phil Jagielka was they mentioned him playing for Stoke. So you're up against serious pros, and it's a
Stephen Fletcher came off the bench, a Scottish international, and
yeah. So it's a measure, isn't it? It's a measure of the league that we're in. And even when we worked that late penalty, and I think Bradshaw did well to earn the penalty. He looked rusty, but good enough to know when to fall over in the penalty area. And the referee pointed to the spot. But I mean,
it was a bit soft, wasn't it? Let's face it. Well, if it had been given down the other end, we'd have been on Twitter and Hoff and things like that, calling the referee all kinds of things.
We would, and you're
soft, but you take them.
You take it because you have to take your luck. But it did feel a bit like we've been handed, a birthday cake when it wasn't their birthday or something. And it was a poor penalty. I thought that was a tired-looking shot from Jed. It was pretty much a central, just slightly off centre, wasn't it? And the goalkeeper went down well to get some. They were making it out to be like Gordon Banks' save in 1970 on Radio Stoke, but I thought it was actually a pretty mundane penalty by Jed standards. So it summarised the day.
It was. Yeah, well, absolutely. It was a poor penalty. Yeah, but it was a poor penalty to win.
Yeah, and
it was also a poorly taken penalty. But really, I think if it had gone in, you might have seen a snick.
Yeah, we found
that end and stuck in an equaliser, because that kind of thing gives you a boost, doesn't it? It lifts you. And
Ojo and Bradshaw in looking hungry, and it could have been still possible. I think in the end we've got to take our medicine on this one, Neil, because
definitely
didn't deserve it. And I think also a sense of perspective. I mean, social media is an interesting thing. Not sure it's always the best invention that the human race has ever come up with, but some of the knee-jerk reactions that you see on there, I don't know if they're ironically meant, or if people do live their life around this kind of, lurch from being 1 minute we're world beaters on Wednesday, and then 3 days later we are sack Rowett and bring in, I don't know who we're going to bring in. I think we're at the break, and that's a good thing. And I think that the club's done very well to turn the season around. I think we probably do need the rest, and we're bringing back some players. And then obviously at the end of the season, we'll review where we are. There's a lot of players out of contract in the summertime. And I wonder what the squad will look very different come next August, whatever becomes of us, Neil, won't it?
Yeah, well, I think so. And well, who knows if the manager will stick around. I know that he's been linked with jobs elsewhere, and his stock's risen in the last few weeks again, hasn't it?
Yes, it has. Yeah. It's an interesting question, actually, isn't it?
Well, I hope he does, because I still think that, I know we criticise him, but then again, opinions are like arseholes. Everybody's got one, haven't they, really?
I thought it was one of the questions I wanted to raise, because obviously it's been kicked around all season, and it's as much Gary Rowett's decision as it is Millwall Football Club. I think Millwall will be keen to keep him, because I thought on Wednesday we saw the potential of the side when it plays at its absolute maximum, and it was a magnificent performance on Wednesday. I don't think we should, today it feels a bit flat because of the result yesterday and the performance, but that was a performance of the season on Wednesday night, and it just gave me a sense of what could be achieved if Rowett brings in the players that he likes and wants to work with next season. It gave you a little bit of a glimpse of something there, Neil.
Yeah, it was a magnificent performance, wasn't it? Magnificent all-round performance. I can't remember much about it now, unfortunately, because we're about 4 days later, and I've watched about 4 games since then. But we're not all in football. But there's something there. There's definitely something there, and if he can build upon it, I think we're better off with him than we are without him, because I can't see us getting a manager of that ilk and standing. I think we've put the question before, haven't we?
I think you're right. Yeah,
but we shouldn't turn this into, is this the end for him? Because that's just rejoicing the fact that we've got him here, and we are going to get the ump because he does have his set formation, and we are a 4-4-2 club, aren't we? Let's face it. Yeah, but everybody, I think, looks for a scapegoat, don't they? And the manager's generally the first thing that people look at and look to criticise.
I furiously mute people online, listeners. There was one opinion yesterday about Jed Wallace missing a penalty and something about how he wants away at the end of the season, so no wonder he missed the penalty. If this is how people's minds seriously work, I just press the mute button on that person, and then I don't have to be in trouble with their views and opinions ever again. But one opinion I do like is Kevin Fuller. He's talking about the Luton Town game, which I thought looks huge, a season decider. And Kevin says this is a test. It's magnificent. We've gone on a great run, but the true test of a great team is to bounce back from defeat and start a run again. All of the Mill promotion sides of the past have bounced back from a single defeat, and now it's a 6-pointer at Kenilworth Road. And it's a great point, because really I think if we can get something at Luton, then it's game back on again. Whereas I think if we struggle there, Neil, it just starts to feel like the end of season tournament is starting to slip away from us a little bit. I don't know if you see it that way.
I think in some ways, I think the team would probably quite like to play next week, but I think in other ways, they'll be quite glad to have the break. So will that work against us? Luton are another team a bit like us. They've exceeded most expectations of their season, haven't they?
Absolutely, third in the table at the moment.
Yeah, but if you have a look at the table, there's teams below us and them that you would expect to be up there, the likes of Swansea and teams like that, teams that throw an awful lot of money at it. So this is a good test. They're a similar sized club to us.
Yeah.
Similar ambition, I suppose, to stay in the Championship.
Yeah, and they're enjoying the run. I mean, the third in the table. I'm just looking at the table as we speak. I was looking at the fixtures. I mean, I always go for this reverse Mill psychology, Neil. I never know whether a so-called easy run in, and we seem to have some fixtures that you would expect us to win. We almost thrive on the unexpected, don't we? We want the big teams rather than the Peterboroughs and the Swanseas and the rest. It's this Millwall mentality that give us the big time and we'll rise to the occasion. Give us a so-called easier opponent and we'll fall over.
I think we've got Barnsley in amongst that lot, and that's a team that's probably for quite some time, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, Sheffield United's run-in doesn't look easy. There's 1 or 2 big, top 6 fixtures. Blackburn, I think, the same. So it's there in front of us if we can muster up something at Luton. The season's still alive, and I think to be able to say that as we go into April is a magnificent achievement. So I do want to take my hat off to Gary Rowett and the squad for what they've achieved this season. Who knows what may yet come out of it. Neil, I wanted to close us, if I may, mate. I was very sad to see the passing of Pauliggins. There was a really nice obituary on the club website covering Jiggo, who was a person I only met him a couple of times, and he was a great help to us when we did the Lewisham battle. He was able to get us some coverage in the Sun, which was massive. It got us onto a level that, we may have struggled to have achieved otherwise. And I met him the other month when I did the interview for Wall Talk. I don't know if you knew him yourself, Neil. I mean, obviously you're in the journalism game yourself. And he was a Sun journalist, but it's a profession that it's one of those professions that looks easy. Sun level journalism looks easy. It's really, really difficult to do well. Would you agree with that as a journo yourself?
Yes, I didn't. I knew Paul on nodding terms, really. I think the first time I met him was, I think we were both covering Thurrock against Luton in an FA Cup tie. That would have been, 2002, 2003.
Right.
I think he was working for a health authority at the time, in PR or something. I could be wrong, but just the esteem that he's been held in and the things that people have said about him says an awful lot about him as a person. Writing for The Sun is not easy. And a friend of mine who I used to work with, Phil Thomas, paid tribute to Paul and his abilities to write an opening paragraph, which is the hardest thing to do in journalism without a shadow of a doubt, because you've got 30 words to grab somebody's attention, and that's
your hook. That's your hook, isn't it? You've got to get your reader.
Your first 2 or 3 paragraphs are absolutely crucial, and he was a master at it. I'm not. I do come up with the occasional one that's quite good, I suppose, but it was just a massive shock. He's somebody that you know and that you're on nodding terms with. You see it again, you go, hello, Jiggo, we go, all right, mate, and whatever else. But he was younger than me, Nick. I'm 53.
Yeah.
And he's died at 50. It's no age at all. I just sat for the afternoon in a sense of bewilderment, not because he was a close friend, but because he's somebody that obviously I knew of. And it was a lot younger than me, a few years younger than me.
I think it's that. I think
your own mortality.
Well, it does. It does. I mean, as listeners will know, I mean, it puts your own situation through a prism, because it's not even a year since I was nearly in the same position. Nearly, and there's my luck, because Paul was not lucky. I was, and it's life can be the toss of a coin sometimes. I'm not sure what lessons you can draw from it, Neil, because we all know the right things to do in this life, and we all know the wrong things to do, and you make your decisions as a grown person, and that's your choice in the end. And even then, you can do all the right things, and still something will happen to you. So there it is. I'm not going to preach, but I think it does. It shocked me. It stunned me slightly, because I read the obituary on the club website, and then I reread it because I wasn't sure that I'd read it correctly the first time. And somehow, when you see a person's name who I knew Paul in passing, like yourself, I had some contact with him in 2017, and then more recently when I met him again to do the interview. He's a Millwall character, he's everyone that listens to the show. He's got that. He had that life, everything was a joke, and everything was a witty one-liner. And I think you're right. I think that one of the things I've really picked up on the tributes online is how many people from a range of publications too, not just your the obvious places, but from many different walks of journalism have paid tribute to him. And it does feel like a loss, doesn't it? It's one of those situations where a person who is well known goes. It feels like one of the foundations has slipped somehow in life, and very, very sad news.
Mate, the one that struck me was actually Maurizio Pochettino.
Yeah.
I read that on the Sun online, and trust me, getting to know a football manager in this day and age, even a rugby coach, is very, very, very difficult, because they've got so many layers of protection. When I started out in the old days, you could phone up the manager of various clubs or the club secretary, or you went up to a training ground on a Friday.
Yeah.
I can remember being sent to Tottenham on a Friday, and after you spoke to Terry Venables in a very informal surrounding, just after he got off the training pitch, the players were open if you wanted to speak to Gaza or Gary Lineker and people like that, and if they wanted to talk to you, they would.
Yeah.
But now they're surrounded by all these different levels of protection and press officers and agents and various other media relations people. To see that kind of tribute from a person of that standing was, you thought, it's quite something special here. And actually, the players at Millwall, I saw 2 or 3 tweets.
I saw that.
I think that Jed Wallace was one. Danny McNamara, or am I speaking out of turn with that?
I didn't see Danny Mac. I saw Jed's. I have no doubt, because one thing that really struck me, Neil, and you'll know the sports journalism world better. I've never worked in it. But one of the things, the traits that really came over, which you may not have been aware of, with Jiggo had a kind of a character that was big, in the Millwall style. But many people spoke of his kindness and helping them in when they're newly in the room, and that can't be an easy situation. I've never been in that situation, but I do know it must be an intimidating place to find yourself when you've got some big names around you. And Jiggs would go out of his way just to help where he could younger journalists. I think that speaks volumes for a person.
Yeah, it's not an easy place. I think when I first went into a rugby press room, I think they didn't speak to me for 4 years. Yeah, well, I'm not sure.
Was that better, or was that better or worse?
Yeah, well, I'm not sure if it says anything about me as a person, but I think I joined the Rugby Union Writers Club, and then all of a sudden, people actually remembered my name and things like that. And people that didn't previously spoke to you ended up becoming very good friends. You actually spoke to them, and you realised that you had things in common. Somebody who didn't really speak to me at first, we both found out that we both supported Middlesex.
Right, well, there we are. There's a link.
Yeah. So
finding these links, isn't it? Yeah.
It's a very cutthroat, dog-eat-dog world, journalism, because obviously you want to try and get the stories before the opposition. So for somebody to go out of their way and to show you around and to show you the ropes and to show you that kindness speaks volumes.
Absolutely.
Of the person that Jiggo was. And I think he was real Wall, as they say now, wasn't he?
Absolutely. I think he came from a Millwall supporting family, came out of Stepney. His dad was the Mill character, apparently. I didn't know him. And I got to know Paul a little, but his legacy will live on. I think the club are renaming the press lounge to Paul Jiggins Lounge, which I think is a nice touch. And I think it might have made him laugh, actually. I think they probably would have found some amusement in that from what I know of him. But R.I.P. Paul Jiggins. I'm going to play out now, listeners, with a couple of voicemails that Harry and Mike Hayden have sent me. Big thank you to Neil for taking time out of your Sunday morning, mate. I appreciate it. Short notice one today, but I do appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem at all, Nick. Always a pleasure.
And we're going to switch over now to Harry and to Mike Hayden. So thank you for listening, dear listeners. We're going to take a little bit of a break now till after the Luton game, and we'll be back to see where we stand in the season at that stage. So until then, thank you for listening. Thanks for Neil, and bye for now.
Achtung, Millwall.
Mike Hayden here, just providing a few thoughts of mine heading into the international break. Well, an unfortunate result and performance at Stoke, 2-0 loss and a missed penalty by Jed Wallace. I'll be honest, I didn't see the game, but heard it was a poor performance from Millwall. But you know, you got to put it into context. It was always going to happen at some stage that we were going to have a poor performance like that. I think especially that we clearly put so much heart and soul into that performance against Huddersfield, one of the best performances this season, if not the best, and maybe the best under Gary Rowett's tenure. By having to then lose goalscorer Phoebe, obviously he was loan tied, couldn't play against Stoke, and essentially the same sort of 11. Eventually, they're going to run out of legs, especially we've had 4 games in 2 weeks with the squad limitations. I can kind of excuse yesterday. I know it was disappointing because we're well on the Rowett train at the moment, but look, it was going to happen at some stage. We've got to be realistic. The international break, I think, comes at a good time. We're 4 points off the playoffs. It was great to see if there were any positives on Saturday was that Bradshaw and Kieftenbell came back in. Obviously, Bradshaw showing some of his best form in a Lions shirt before the injury. And Kieftenbell, I thought his performances were very impressive before he got injured. We've got Ojo back on the bench as well. So, it's a good opportunity to refresh, get some sort of fire back in the legs, get some energy back. And we go again after the international break and try and get that final push. I don't think anyone expected us to go on this 8-game unbeaten run, which included 6 wins. It's not one of those Rowett unbeaten runs where 90% are draws. There were 6 wins in there. And you've got to give massive credit to Gary Rowett and the players and the effort that they've showed. I think it just worked because we got ourselves into a position in the league where it was kind of like, we're not expected to finish in the top 6 now. And just taking that pressure off the players, it's funny what the brain can do to you, isn't it? Well, we've got nothing to lose. We might as well see what happens. And then we go on, obviously, a fantastic run of form and give ourselves a chance again. But look, I think we've still got to go into that approach of having low expectations because it's just working. Let's just see if we can do it. I think the way that we've played over the last few games shows us how good this Millwall side can be. So let's have a push. If we just miss out, I think we've got to say what an effort it's been for Millwall. So that's just some thoughts. Really excited to get back down the den after the international break with some players back. And let's see what we can do. I'm looking forward and I'm enjoying the ride. Come on, you Lions.
So, Harry Warren here with my international break, the last international break before the end of the season review. For me, the running, I will address first. Obviously, I didn't see the Stoke game yesterday. I didn't go up there. Fair play to the near on 1,000 of you that did. And the run out to come to an end some time. It is a disappointment, however, that it come to a end against Stoke yesterday. I think, if we're honest, the team were out on their feet. It was a fantastic performance against Huddersfield. To then perform the way that we did, poorly for all accounts at Stoke, to lose was not great, but probably the build-up of sort of the last 5 or 6 games just caught up with us. But the running is favourable to other teams. Everyone's got to play everyone in that sort of top, take the top 2 out of it, or don't really take the top 2 out of it, take Fulham out of it, and then probably, down to 10th, 11th. So there's a good 10 teams in that. So over the next 8, 9 games, there's going to be 8 for some, 9 for some, 10 for some, as the Championship hasn't got. People have got games in hand, including ourselves, over some of the teams in front of us. So I think we're 4 points behind Blackburn, for instance, and this is off memory, so it might be less than that or it might be more, but I think with a win we'd go a point behind them. So there's stuff like that. Obviously others can say the same. Forest, I know, have got the most games in hand. But do you want games in hand at this stage of the season, or do you want points on the ball, guaranteed bricks and mortar almost? I think you'd rather have the points, if I'm honest. Just because of the accumulation of games. But really, we still do have a realistic chance of the top 6, and, by hook or by crook, we're in it. I think Gary Rowett's comments on Sky Television the other night, after the Huddersfield win, were interesting, in where he said that for the last couple of years we've been a good side and we've been 8th, 9th and 10th, just missing out on the playoffs. Now, that is true. However, I feel like we haven't really gone forward. I think we have gone forward in terms of results recently, but realistically, I don't think we've made the steps that I thought we would. That's being honest. Maybe I asked too much. I think the squad, with the amount of injuries that it's had, has done remarkably well, however. But there is, there's question marks about members of the squad. I think the squad that's playing at the moment is playing to the top of its ability. And just because players come back fit doesn't mean necessarily they're better than what we've already got. The players that we've got are knackered, but they've played very, very well. And it's difficult to see how you can justify, I don't know, I'm going to pick on a player because, what's more Millwall than picking on one particular player? Let's say, for instance, that Hutchinson is fit when we return from the international break. Does Hutchinson walk back into the squad over Ballard, Cooper, Murray Wallace? I didn't see yesterday, so I don't know if they made a rip for the goal, but I'd argue no. But Gary Rowett will make his own decisions. This is the thing, is that the fact that we've had no players has almost made us have less pressure, which has made us play better in a weird way. The yin and yang of Millwall. If you think that we're out of it, we win. If you think that we're dead certs, we lose. That has always been the Millwall bipolar, shall we say, and I think that will continue. I don't necessarily agree with the idea that Luton Town away looks like a season decider. I think if you go there and don't get beat, you'll still be in it. I think there's other teams to pick off rather than Luton. I don't think Huddersfield are in great form after losing again yesterday. I don't think after they were, but to lose 2 games back to back obviously drags them closer to the pack. There's other people, other teams that are themselves in a bit of free fall. QPR, as I mentioned, this were 1-0 up against Peterborough and were 1-1 the last thing that I heard, so that might be worse. But again, we will see in the short to medium term of what we'll do. Whatever happens now, this is the problem. I feel if we were not to be in the running, in 2 or 3 games' time, would by the time the season ends, your feelings have changed in what we need in the summer? Because I don't think we need much. I think, yes, there are certain things we lack. But the problem is what we've got now is very, very good. The problem is that we're going to lose a key player in Jed. So we will have to rebuild in the summer, regardless whether we want to or not, which is unfortunate because I don't think, believe it or not, I think that we're as close to getting in the top 6 as we've ever been. And, we're probably 2 or 3 players short. We've said this before. We won't get those 2 or 3 players in the summer, or haven't traditionally, and we'll go back to being 10th or 11th place in this incarnation of Millwall in the Championship. And you've got to worry about cycles. We tend to do 5 or 6 seasons in the Championship before being relegated, before having sort of 2 or 3 years in League One to rebuild and go again, which hopefully, touch wood, the club have learnt from this time and don't seem to be falling into those traps. So yeah, the future looks good. End of season, last term report, Millwall got a chance to do something special. All we need is a fighting chance ever. Let's hope we go away and end the season in the way that we want. I think this is the weird thing. I think it's hard to get in the playoffs, which will be my last point. I think it's very hard to get into the playoffs, but if we do get in the playoffs, I think we win them. And I mean this. I think if you get into the playoffs and you get in on the last day, it only matters on the last day. I couldn't care if we're 7th, 8th or 9th until 5:30 on that Sunday when we play Bournemouth. If we win that game and we end up in the playoffs as 6th place side and we have to play Huddersfield, I don't fear them, and the others, Luton and QPR maybe, or maybe Forest and QPR, or maybe Forest and Luton. If any of the others, there's been no one that's blown you away other than really Fulham. So, you know, we've got a fighting chance. If we end up in the playoffs, I fancy us, mainly because you know what the Den will be like. So we've almost won before. I know we've got to go out and do it, but I feel like we'd almost have won before we kick a ball. And Gary Rowett's sort of pragmatic approach away from home suits the playoffs. So, you know, then it's a one-off game at Wembley, and I do believe we are better set up in the system that we play now to go to Wembley and win. We play a wide system that relies on the full-backs getting wide out the 5 and using the space, and I think we've got players now that, you know, would love the space of that Wembley pitch. Now, I am talking a long way away. We've got to get there first, and I think that's the hard bit. But I think if we did get into the playoffs, we will win them. But the hard bit is to get in them first. So, yeah, we'll see how that one goes. But anyway, come on, you Lions. Let's hope for a magical, memorable end to the season after 2 years of COVID football. Wouldn't it be nice to see Millwall in the playoffs for the first time in this division since, 2001, 2002? So a good 20 years ago. So, arrivederci Millwall.
Thank you for listening to Achtung Millwall. If you enjoyed the show, please head over to Apple Podcasts and leave us a cheeky little review. Arrivederci Millwall. Till next time.
Who do you want to watch?